First of all, let me say I apologize for the sound of my voice. I have been sick, but this is the day that I got to shoot, so here we go. This is the updated version of this video. I'm gonna pop in again a bit later to provide some extra context because of how deeply my critique has upset Gillis fans. But I also want to say here at the top, no, the point of this whole thing is not merely to troll guys who like him. We simply have different opinions about the quality of the work in this special. Maybe I'll like the next one. Maybe you'll hate it. Now, having said that, if you are the type of person who likes low-effort, racist content, and you don't like my content, I'm comfortable with that. So, no, I'm not trolling you. But I don't mind if you're mad. Let's talk about Shane Gillis's special, Beautiful Dogs. This special is on Netflix. The link is below. Go give it a watch and then come back. Now, I became familiar with Gillis as a comedian when he got fired off SNL just days after getting hired because of some stuff that he said and imitations he did of Asian people. And apparently, those kinds of thoughts and comments are things that he still does, especially in the podcast universe, as reported by Seth Simons on his site Humorism. Find that link below. On the plus side for Gillis, he also got what I consider to be a very soft landing in a New Yorker piece by Khalifa Sana. Link to that is below as well. That piece framed Gillis as a likable special boy who sometimes says bad things but is really a sweetie. In particular, I found this quote from Sana's New Yorker piece to be remarkable, speaking about Gillis. He is, even now, the kind of straight guy who sometimes uses gay as a mild pejorative, but he excels at winning over skeptical audiences. Wow, you mean we really can weaponize gayness against gay people? Gosh, this Gillis must be a really persuasive speaker to be able to push on that open door. Give me a break, Sana. So those are the things that I know about Gillis and his work going in. A quick update for all the Gillis fans who have been screaming in anguish that my critique is bogus because I'm unfairly biased against Gillis, and if I just opened my mind to his low-effort race. Sweetheart, this is not a court of law. I'm not a judge. I'm a guy who wants to talk about comedy, and these are my opinions. Of course I bring my prior experience to the table when I'm viewing it. Everyone does that when they look at every piece of art. If I were the kind of person who felt some tingle of ethics about this, even though I'm not a lawyer or judge or journalist, probably the way to handle it would be to list what I know and link to sources if possible, so that other people can draw their own conclusions. Which is what I did. I'm expecting to see some boomer Facebook meme level jokes, but let's keep an open mind and appreciate the work as presented. At about 1 minute into the show, let me say as a filmmaker that it is beautiful color-wise. Very saturated reds and blues. No doubt whoever color graded the special considered the link between these saturated reds and blues and the polarization of American politics. I see you out there, video person or people. Well done. We see Gillis waiting to go on stage. He's wearing the Louis C.K. comedy uniform of jeans and a black tee. Now, as I've said before, I like to see comedians in understated clothes for the most part. He's got a kind of a nervous tic where he's constantly adjusting his shirt as he talks, as though he's not comfortable inside it, or he's only happy if it's sitting on him a certain way. Now, I can relate, never having had a body that clothes look good on, but being forced to wear them anyway. Gillis receives a standing ovation before he even says a word. I mean, these guys are adding new dimensions to the concept of a receptive crowd. He could read the label on his t-shirt and get laughs, which is exactly what you want if you're shooting a special. The crowd appears to me to be a lot of beefy dudes who look more or less like Gillis himself. He even addresses this later in the special.
I understand most of the women here are girlfriends that were dragged to this show that already don't really like me because every time they're in their car, their boyfriend's like, babe, listen to this part of the podcast.
It strikes me as weird how some pretty big comics seem to have a very tight demographic and are not concerned about that at all. I don't understand why this isn't something more widely talked about. The New Yorker piece I mentioned before treats Gillis like he has a wide appeal, but Gillis himself punts that notion over the horizon.
And now those women are here, and the show is going exactly how they knew it was going to go.
In terms of appeal, though, Gillis's delivery is extremely conversational and accessible. There's just about zero wordplay in the special, which is generally advisable. I don't know this, but my guess, after seeing this special is that Gillis is a find it on stage kind of joke writer as compared with someone like Mulaney, whose speech is more overtly precise. So let's get into it. Gillis's first joke is not really even a joke. It's an America First pander.
Anytime I go to another country, as soon as I get out of the airport and start like driving around, I'm just like, dude, this is your fucking country, dude? Other countries suck, dude. America's number one, dude. It's not.
I was thinking there would be an other side type joke to go with that, and there is when Gillis says, I've been to like 3 countries. But the laugh is kind of lost for that in the still bubbling America, energy. The real pendulum swing comes when Gillis starts to talk about how any conversation with people from other countries gets awkward when they bring up mass shootings, which we in the US have and no other developed nation does. You've probably had this conversation either with or as an American yourself. He gets a big laugh from this by embodying an America First style doofus and saying,
At least we're not gay.
on the one hand, this is not Gillis straightforward saying those words as a defense for mass shootings. He appears to understand that the shootings are a legitimate, ongoing horror from which we suffer in the US for no good reason. He's taking on the persona of someone who would say, at least we're not gay, but the persona is not really that far from Gillis himself, so there's a little element there of being able to have your cake and eat it too. We learn a few minutes later on that Gillis does not feel the need to take on an alternate persona in order to do black guys ruin sports for white people jokes or black guys have big penises jokes. So as for why he assumed an alternate persona for the above, we can only speculate. A few minutes later, he is not at all in his alternate persona when he complains that China might think,
Look how weak and gay America is.
this is low-effort material you can hear at any open mic, or as predicted in boomer Facebook memes. I'm surprised Gillis managed to build it into a gig on SNL, and not surprised that it eventually bit him in the ass. About 20 minutes in, Gillis takes a moment in the middle of a section about how he wishes his girlfriend would evaporate after sex to assure us that he's saying very, very funny jokes.
From up here, it's a very, very funny joke.
This is a self-referential meta tactic that fits perfectly with someone like Jeselnik's persona because his jokes and delivery are so meticulously crafted. But to attempt it here in reference to saying that women just fold clothes, to me, is as low effort as the folding stuff joke itself. It is a flex with no muscle. There's some material where Gillis says that he's not a Republican, but he is a history buff, and for that reason can feel that he will become a Republican. He says it could happen to anyone like him, especially if they like World War II history. I don't understand this part. Not to oversimplify, but my read of history is that fascism was bad. If what he means here is that he watches videos of World War II and is turning that into a story where America single-handedly defeated Hitler and stormed the Reichstag, well, I think a lot of you know the latter half of that view is not factually accurate. The US was part of a group of people called the Allies, and we could be allies again on a ton of other challenges as well. LGBTQ kids, for example, could use some allies. Shane. To me, Gillis's material is a window into a MAGA-curious white male's image of white male Americans, history, and himself, which is to say it carefully avoids a nuanced look at any of the above. It's a thought pattern where it seems like he understands intellectually that, for example, fascism is wrong, but also feels that he must be a Republican because he himself is white, and white is his team, and Republicans represent whiteness, and if fascism gets moved along in the process, well, it won't be Gillis they come for, so. I don't understand why men like this seem to be able to observe a relatively clear picture of the world around them, understand that a good approach might be to become more liberal, but are so committed to whiteness and thus republicanism that they feel torn up by it.
I gotta fight it every day, like a fucking werewolf.
But he won't fight it fully because he's made it into a career. He can't appear or say anything too woke, or he could lose some of his beefy conservative fans. But he appears to also wrestle with an accurate perception that, in general, kindness and understanding are good. The result is this simmering, MAGA-curious persona constantly plucking at the perception of republicanism because it feels inevitable but doesn't sit right. The closest thing I've ever seen or read to explain this type of person is Isabel Wilkerson's book, Caste. So if you're struggling with this too, maybe try giving that a read. There is another long section in this special where Gillis talks about visiting a historical site and being confronted by a reenactor there in character as a slave. Gillis feels attacked by what that person is saying. In the first version of this video, I said here that Gillis ended this bit by pulling down his mask to expose the reenactor to COVID. I said that this was a window into the way that conservatives see COVID as a weapon of some kind against liberalism, which they do. I also said in plain English that I didn't think Gillis really did that. Now, I'm not saying that Gillis really did that, but that hasn't stopped Gillis fans from commenting not only on the Gillis video, but also on my other videos that is what I did. That's how triggered they are. This is a tiny channel with minuscule viewership, but they left over 100 comments, many of which pointed out that no, in the bit, he pulled down his mask to help sell the lie to the reenactor that Gillis is in fact special needs, thereby escaping hearing further facts about American slavery. Now, in my opinion, this is a distinction without much of a difference. The imaginary Gillis in the story still pulled down his mask. Doing that during a pandemic is inextricable from the pandemic. Now, I would say again here that I don't think real Gillis really did that, but y'all ignored it the first time, so why bother? Let's look at it another way. If you pull down your pants and bend over, it's inescapable that people are going to understand that you want them to see your beehole. In that moment, they might not care that you've written a funny joke in your crack that you also wanted them to see. But in the interest of rigor, on a second viewing, I can see the other part of the joke all the Gillis fans are triggered about. That, and a lot of beeholes. Now, I also want to say thanks for the laughs. It has been an absolutely wild few days watching the energy that you guys have to defend this work, which to me is indistinguishable from what any teenager with a history of abuse is shouting into first-person shooter voice chats. Now, I say that as a grown one of those kids. Y'all have demonstrated over and over that you genuinely believe that there's some deeper meaning that underpins his calling people gay or making low-effort jokes about ethnicities or women. Your belief in it is fascinating in the same way that faith healers or snake handlers are fascinating. I mean, I feel like I'm dealing with Scientology here, but no amount of calling me those same slurs that Gillis uses is gonna make your fantasy real. And it also kind of proves my point about his comedy and the kind of people who like it, but I can see how that would be a realization that's just out of reach for you guys. Also hilarious is when y'all keep commenting that Gillis is universally loved and you represent everyone across the political spectrum, even though Gillis himself tells you that's false. YouTube analytics from the previous video confirm the same thing. You're 25 to 44, male, and from the United States. 0 other places, 0 women. That's why Gillis panders to you at the start of the special.
Other countries suck. America's #1, dude. It's not.
He has the same data. He knows who you are. He wants to make you feel good and protect your image of yourself so that you'll give him money. Now, everybody's got to make a little money to get along, so I can kind of understand him on that, but y'all making it into a movement rather than a business model is sad. But since you're so toxic about it, it's getting easier to laugh. On top of that, I also don't understand how a person can think of themselves as a history buff and yet feel attacked by a factual suggestion of what slavery was like. It hurts my brain to think about it. In summary, if there is a charitable way to talk about this special, it is that Gillis is extremely accessible. There's not a lot of effort here to come up with new ideas or observations, nor to craft jokes around either. If you're the kind of person who gets your flu shot but not COVID and doesn't like to talk about why, you'll probably like it. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, like and subscribe, and maybe jump on the Patreon if you want to help me make more. And if you want to talk about comedy writing with people who are trying to do it in a constructive way, we also have a Discord channel.